Well, howdy, everybody. This is Bill Whittle here with the Stratosphere Lounge, episode 118. Whoa, what happened? Some sort of nuclear bomb blast went off while I wasn't paying attention. I see what the problem is. This has got to just go away. Hang on one second. And yes, it is, in fact, the worst produced show on the internet. We have a reputation to protect, and we take that very seriously around here. Hopefully that'll get me back in sync, because I don't look like I'm in sync with myself. Maybe you could tell me if I appear to be in sync for you people, because there's a definite delay here. One of the things that we're talking about is doing the show on Facebook, the new Facebook Live, and that's going to be fun, because this has been a bit problematic over the course of the years. Although, with that said, 117 episodes of this beast, 118 now, Ustream has really done it for us. So I was considering that it's free to you and mostly free to me. I think it's a pretty good deal. So anyway, hi everybody. I'm sorry about the delays. And last week I might have been gone for 2 weeks in a row. I do not remember. I've never been this busy in my life, and I was busy before. So let me tell you what's going on, but first I'm going to have a little drink, because I just had to sneak a barbecue power bar, believe it or not. Yeah, boy oh boy. Yesterday we shot 4 of the new right angle shows. I shot a new Nexus report, I shot 5 new time over targets, and I shot the next firewall, which is about Obama's foreign policy, and it's called President Failure, Smart Diplomacy. And it's appalling. You just hear it all in one space. It's just appalling. The video's awesome. It's a foreign policy that's appalling. So it's been busy here. So I only can do an hour tonight, because I have to try and edit and complete a firewall. I've got a speaking engagement tomorrow at San Luis Obispo. Then Friday I'm going to Colorado Springs for an event on Saturday. So I'm busy, and it's really exciting. I have to tell you, I think this last week or two has been more fun than any time since I've been doing this, and it's been a lot of fun. It's just been fun. We got, for those of you that may have missed the multiple announcements, PJTV basically closes their doors on May 10th. The last production was last week. We shot our last videos last week. I think they're still holding on to my final afterburner. And when I was told about this, my immediate response out of my mouth was to the executive producer. He told me, my immediate response was, guys, 8 years of employment in this line of work is not just a great gig, it's it's eternal life. I mean, it's amazing. No one would have ever heard of me if it hadn't been for you. I'm very, very grateful for all the time and all the fish. Thanks for all the fish. And then as soon as that happened, I got off the phone. No, we went in and shot the trifectas. And then I got on the phone and we called Steve and Scott right away. The 3-person conference call, and I said, I want to keep going with this. What about you guys? They said, absolutely. So we were going to move Trifecta over to BillWhittle.com, and then PJTV had a licensing agreement with us for the name Trifecta. And while I didn't want to rebrand in midstream, none of us were ever terribly in love with that name, Scott especially. So we decided to rename it. And we were trying to come up with a name, and I called Scott late at night. Must have been about 10 o'clock his time, 11 or something. It was about 9 my time, 7 or 8. I said, oh, dude, what about if we call it Right Triangle? And this was a text. And he said, well, he texted back. He said, I don't think you need to have the triangle. I think people can figure that out. What if we just call it Right Angle? I said, awesome. And then Scott had an idea, which was so tempting. He wanted to call it Trivector. And the reason he wanted to call it Trivector was because if you say it fast, it sounds like the show hasn't changed at all. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Trivector. I'm Bill Whittle. But I really like Right Angle, and immediately got to work on doing a couple of tech tests. I put the graphics package together really fast in the space of a couple days, but I think it looks really, really sharp. I like the new open very much. I like the new close very much. I like the lower thirds. And I think the new look is clean, really clean. I think as far as right angle goes, obviously we need to improve the video quality, mostly for Steve. We're doing it through Skype, and there's probably 100 better ways to do it. But our main concern, in fact, our immediate concern, all three of us, our concern was we decided we weren't going to miss any episodes. The nightmare was that PJTV and Trifecta would wind down, people would lose track of the show, they wouldn't know where to find us again. So it was really important that we get the 4 shows out this week, and that's exactly what we're doing. So tomorrow will be my episode, then Scott's on Friday. We've done a members-only show for BillWhittle.com members now. We used to do 1 or 2 for PJTV members a week. And we're going to make a point of recording the conference call. We've been doing a conference call before the show every week for 7 years. It's 2,500 episodes or something like that. Or segments anyway. And so if we can do things like get Steve's bandwidth up and get that camera improved, and I'm sure we can, the show will look a lot sharper in the next couple weeks. The main thing we wanted to do was get out on time and not miss an episode, and that we did, and we were really, really pleased about that. I was very pleased about that. It's left me with a mountain of editing to do. I've got to cut a firewall, and I got to get that delivered, and I have to do time over targets and Nexus report and all those other members-only benefits. But I would like to say, and in fact, this is kind of the first question. Since I have to do about an hour tonight, why don't we just jump into it, because this is definitely related. Sam Hackett writes, Bill, hi, Bill. Most of us are looking forward to the huge success of BillWhittle.com. Thank you very much, Sam. Can you give us a couple words on how things are looking with the beginning of the push for membership? There was a world, I've been, it's so nice to be honest with everybody here. For quite a while, I had done some calculations in my head about whether or not I should stay at PJTV. Just telling you the backstory here. And it turns out that about 1,000 members or so, a gain of 1,000 members would make up the lost income if I left, and anything beyond that would be profit, and anything less than that would be lost. And I thought about it, but I didn't do it for a number of reasons. First of all, I'm very, very, very grateful to PJTV. I didn't want to lose the show with Steve and Scott. I didn't want to be the guy who leaves the network and leaves them high and dry. I did that once back in 2010 over some minor contract disputes, but and I didn't want to compete with myself. So I just didn't want to be the bad guy. So when PJTV told us they were closing, it's not like I wasn't prepared for it. It's just like all of a sudden you have to act. And as you point out, Sam, in that question, the whole thing continues to hinge upon whether or not we can move enough of the PJTV members over to BillWhittle.com as paying members, because those people, and I know many of you are watching right now, are the golden apple, is what I referred to as. They're people who are already paying for this content and seem to be happy with it. So if we do it, we'll do it. Precious Snowflake just asked, where is the right angle on BillWhittle.com? It's not up yet. It's we're starting a new channel page, but it is on the Facebook page. And I will have that probably up by tomorrow, because I've got to set up a whole new channel page and new artwork for it and all the rest. But we just did it. And I'll come back to the members in one second, but I just want to say, also at Bill Whittle channel, thank you very much, Dave Big Booty. Bill Whittle channel's got everything on YouTube. We had a lot more fun doing these shows than we had at PJTV. We're doing them in like this, open collars and sports coats. That had something to do with it, but I think mostly it was just the fact that we're working for ourselves now. We really are. Steve closed that first show by saying, we're trying to do a network TV, internet network TV show without the network, and he's right. So we did 4 episodes, and number 2's coming out tomorrow, and I loved it. I had a great time. They had a great time. I love the new look, the new graphics, and everything. Steve's camera's going to get better, so we'll improve the technical quality of the show. But the big question that Sam was asking is about the membership and how things are going with the push. We have. I was worried about the membership for the length of time that I've had this thing open. That's not to say anything to the people who've been our stalwart members and stalwart members through times of thick and thin and missed deadlines and bill time and all the rest of it. That's not the slightest bit of criticism of them. But in all the pushes that I've done, we might see, a really good week. We might see 15 new members or something. And right now, we are pretty near 50% of what we need to make up the lost revenue. We're about halfway. But we did that in a week. So for the first time ever, we started to see numbers that made me believe that this is going to continue. So that was very nice. For all of you who've been members before, thank you. For all of you who come over just recently to be members, thank you. And we still need to get at least another half of what we've gotten to keep my doors open, and a little more than that to keep Steve and Scott we got to keep Steve and Scotch. That's the main thing. I'm going to put a little teaser out probably Monday. And Steve Green's appeal is, hey, go over to BillWhittle.com, become a member, because these vodka glasses don't fill themselves. And I thought, great, that's exactly the pitch we need. Please part with some of your hard-earned money so that Steve Green can stay in single malt Scotch. But in any event, I'm very, very pleased with the show. I'm very, very, very pleased that we were able to do it with a week's notice and just get them right back out there. We went with the first episode was a Trump episode, and it's the most divisive thing, and certainly among the right, it's the most divisive thing in the country right now. And that was a bit of a risk. But, I didn't agree with Steve and Scott on this one, at least not now. And as Steve pointed out, isn't it nice to be able to disagree and, not throw some of these hand grenades that have been thrown out there. I did a call-in show. I'm going to be in Colorado Springs. I'm sorry, going to be in Boulder on Saturday, and I did a call-in show up there, and they asked me about the Trump thing, and I said, look, I'm just not going. Me personally, I'm not going to contribute to this civil war. I'm not going to increase the vitriol, and I'm not going to increase the name calling. I think it's pretty clear. I've been a Ted Cruz fan for well before the election, well before, for several years now. But I'm not going to be one of these people who starts this name calling, and I'm not going to continue this disgraceful civil war that is just simply ripping this party up and ripping the country up. I've never seen this kind of hostility towards anybody in politics, and this Trump Cruz thing has got to just calm down a little bit. So anyway, that's that. So yes, so the good news is we're going to keep doing trifectas. The main reason I wanted to do it, aside from the fact that these guys are great friends of mine and I would miss it terribly, was that trifecta is three times a week content for the Facebook and for BillWhittle.com, and it's terrific. So I'm very, 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 very happy to be doing that. I just see from the comment section that Silent Glove says that Rush Limbaugh's apparently taken the same position and angered both groups. There's an old adage that says if you're trying to decide something and both sides are angry at you, you've been as fair as it's possible to be. So, there it is. And we're not there yet. We'll see what happens when we get there. But right now, that's my position on it. So again, we have a short show, so let's get going here with first question from James Edward Hamilton. As a self-proclaimed member of Maybe Trump, how do you square the recent revelations that Trump would indeed raise taxes and supports transgenders in women's bathrooms? If Donald occupies many of the same positions as Hillary at this point in the campaign, I must ask, what difference at this point does it make? My read of the Trump candidacy has been this. Trump said a lot of things in the beginning of the campaign that resonated with a lot of people, and I'm one of them. Securing the border, rebuilding the defense, having a hat that says "Making America Great Again." First time I talked about him in an afterburner, I said I'll vote for the hat if for nothing else. And then over time, I've watched him make statements off the cuff that just seem to me to indicate that this is not a conservative in the way that I understand conservatism and the way I've been trying to fight for conservatism. And then after he makes this statement, it's not like he walks it back so much as it's clarified, and many times it's clarified into 180 degrees opposite of what he said. I think the healthcare thing is an example. He said basically in an interview he thought the job of the government was to provide healthcare, and he was going to provide government healthcare in a way that other Republicans weren't. And since then, apparently, he's put together a very good private health plan. So here's, you basically asked me about the maybe Trump, the never Trump, and if there's not much difference between him and Hillary. My opinion is based on three things on why I would vote for Trump if he's the nominee. And it looks like he's going to be. And one of them is not party loyalty, by the way, because I don't think party loyalty is an ethical motivation. I think party loyalty is a lovely thing to have if it's pragmatically good, and if your party is doing the moral thing, then it doesn't even come into the issue. But right now it does, and so it's not a question of doing it out of loyalty to the Republican Party, because the Republican Party hasn't shown any loyalty to us. Certainly, he is not. The Donald Trump phenomenon is due to Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and all the rest of the people that we sent to Washington to stop Barack Obama and didn't. It's just I don't know what to say about that. Obama's elected in 2008, 2009. He forces Obamacare down the nation's throat using all kinds of backroom deals and deemed to have passed, and not a single Republican vote, quarter of the economy. It's an absolute flaming catastrophe. And so in 2009, the Tea Party arises out of nowhere. In 2010, we send a wave of Republicans into the House in order to stop Barack Obama, because in order to get a law passed, it needs the House, the Senate, and the President. He's been operating out of executive orders, and that is what we should have stopped. I mean, if we sent the if I was running this thing, if I was the GOP chair, there's only certain things I can control, and one of them is whether or not the president's going to obey the law. I can't control that. That's up to the president. However, if I turned out that the president was using executive orders to do the kind of things that they were never intended to do, which is basically, I need to hire another 4 people for the White House. Do we have to pass legislation to do that? No, that's essentially what executive orders are for. If we start getting executive orders on immigration, executive orders on health care, executive orders delaying health care, all that stuff, if I'm the GOP chairman, I'm going to say to the party that just in 2010 flooded the House, no, we are not going into that chamber until the president respects the limitations of the Constitution. We'll just do our business out here. We'll just stay out here on the steps of the Capitol, and we will not go into that chamber until the president obeys the law. And if he doesn't obey the law after a week, we'll start impeachment proceedings. That's what you would do if you thought that things like immigration is not something that the president has the power to dictate. And he doesn't. So, and then in 2012, we were given a choice between the guy who invented Obamacare and the guy who implemented Obamacare. At the time when everybody was fighting Obamacare, that's what we were given. So there was a wash. And then in 2014, we send enough Republicans in to take over the Senate as well, and still they don't stop the guy. They just don't. They don't stop him. And people are angry, and I'm angry too. Everybody's really angry. And the left will always tell you, your conservatives are always so angry, your lives are filled with hate. It's like, it's not filled with hate. There's most of my life is not filled with hate. But if you don't hate and get angry at the destruction of something as beautiful as the idea of this country, then there's something wrong with you. If somebody is destroying something you love and care about, and you're not angry, then there's something wrong with you. So, look, as far as my position on this goes, I know a lot of people are in the never Trump camp. I know a lot of people think those people are going to cost us the election, give it to Hillary, and I understand both cases very, very well. I do. I've wrestled with this quite a lot. Right now, my calculation comes down to a couple things. These are ethical things. Trump has said a lot of things I find reprehensible, and done a few things I find pretty beyond the pale. But Trump didn't leave 4 people to die on the embassy in Benghazi, and Trump didn't put national security, top secret and above, emails in a bathroom in an apartment in New York City so that he could avoid freedom of information requests concerning, Trump Industries. He didn't do that, and Hillary Clinton did do that. So the first of my positions in terms of voting for him if he's the nominee, as opposed to the people who've sworn that they won't, is yes, I agree he's done and said some things that I find deeply disturbing, very disturbing. And yet, I haven't seen him commit the kind of treasonous acts or even really the kind of attitude that Hillary Clinton has shown towards this country and towards the security of this country. People are going to die as a result of this email scandal. They probably already died. Many of our human intelligence agents were so badly compromised that even if it didn't happen now, it's going to happen. She has basically sold out the country. And when you look at all the countries that have gotten arms deals or where the uranium gets sold, all of our uranium gets sold to this place after they make a donation to the Clinton Foundation, she's as corrupt as any politician has ever been, ever. And I know that's what the Clinton presidency would be. It'd be the most corrupt administration in the country's history. And I don't know that Trump would be that. I suspect he wouldn't be that corrupt. So what I'm really saying is I know what a Hillary presidency would look like, and I don't like it. I don't know what a Trump presidency would look like. I may not like it, but I know I don't like this. So that's number one. Number two, this political system as it exists now has to be destroyed. And I don't mean tinkered with, and I don't mean tweaked. I mean, it has to be destroyed. The real reason that the Republicans are so absolutely impotent and emasculated, and I'll throw in all the other words like that in there, is because they've been beaten up by this pop culture. It's an iron triangle between the Democratic Party in Washington, the progressives in the news media in New York City controlling the information, and the progressives in the entertainment industry in Hollywood controlling the pop culture. And when your opposition party and all of the newspapers and all of the movies and all of the television and everything else calls you a racist, you tend to shut up unless you've got some force of character. And so that has to be destroyed. And the fact that Trump has brought issues to the table that weren't even discussed before is, in fact, I think, a very significant gain. And I'll go further. When I see, Donald Trump may say something that makes me absolutely livid, that I think is dangerous and un-American and wrong. And then I'll watch late night TV and I'll see, what was his name? Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane doing an anti-Trump version of The Producers on, I guess it was on the Jimmy Fallon show or something like that. It's like, you know what? I'm tired of you guys telling me what's right and wrong. Screw you. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump just so that Lena Dunham can go leave the country. That's enough reason for me, and people understand that. So my second point is this existing triangle of power that intimidates and eliminates the conservative argument from the table. It intimidates the Republican members of Congress to the degree where they don't act, and it intimidates most regular, decent American people so that they don't even speak their minds anymore because they've been told that they're evil racists because they disagree with this communist. They're told that they're evil people because the idea of their 6-year-old daughter going into a restroom with a guy who claims to be a woman disturbs them. Yes, that's horrible, evil, bigoted, racist, horrible nastiness on your part, you miserable, low-life, conservative knuckle-draggers. That entire machine has to be destroyed. And I think that's, I think that is his primary appeal. I've said many times, I think Donald Trump is the destroyer. And I think most of his supporters would agree with that. In Ghostbusters at the end, it's like, they ask him to, you must pick the form of your destroyer, and Dan Aykroyd's character accidentally thinks of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and that's who comes to destroy the city. So I think Trump is the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man with a comb over. He's coming to destroy this system, and after 8 years of being told that everything we believe is wrong and that everything we know to be true is a lie, that people are ready for it to be destroyed, and so am I. And the final reason I think I'll do it, and this one I only thought about very recently. If Hillary Clinton is elected president, we have seen from the last 8 years that the press will not only not report the scandals, not only not report all of the corruption and all of the larceny and all of the security breaches, they not only will not cover those stories, they will in fact cover them up. And I don't know how much of that we can take. This country is designed, it's built to do one thing. The Constitution, in terms of this issue, is built to do one thing, and that's to prevent tyranny. It's to prevent tyranny. That's what the Constitution does. And the only way that works is with a free press, with an actual press that's investigating abuses of power and reporting them to the American people. Now, I don't like this, and it doesn't make me happy, needless to say. But having watched over 8 years that the news media not only not covering Barack Obama, but literally throwing the cloak of invisibility over so many of the things he's done, I realized that whatever fears I might have about a Trump presidency will certainly not go unreported. The media, if Trump wins, the media will be back doing their job. Their job, as they see it, is to destroy Republicans. And they got that half right. Their job is to destroy Republicans. The job should also be to destroy Democrats. Their job should be to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. So I think that the watchdog that has been off the leash and just running around on the lap of the people that have come to steal from the House will be back on duty. And that and the structure of the Constitution keeps me away from a real concern about a genuine, actual tyranny. So that's my reasons. I just don't know. No matter how, you want to ask, the answer to the emotional question is the one I covered first. If you just ask me what's going on in my gut, it's I cannot vote for a woman that sat and watched these guys die for 6 hours on television and told the rescue force to stand down. I can't do it. And if I don't vote for the Republican nominee, it is essentially a vote for her, and I will not do it. The flip side of the argument, it's an extremely rational and it's an extremely moral argument. People saying, well, you would be complicit in Trump's presidency and everything that happens. I said, yes, that's absolutely true. We don't know what that's going to be, but I know what the alternative is going to be. So, I don't know. That's not to say that Donald Trump won't do something either spectacularly good or spectacularly bad between now and then that will make my decision easier, but that's where I am right now. Okay, moving forward here. Now, this is nothing but Trump questions tonight, by the way. Joseph Biosh, that's a tough name. Is it B-L? I can't even read it with it. Bloch. I'm sorry, Joseph Bloch, or maybe Blokey, or Bloch. Sorry about that, Joseph. Joseph, anyway, says, looking forward to the possible future in which Trump wins and the Republican Party collapses, followed by a few terms of Democrats until a new, truly conservative party rises, restoring peace and prosperity to our great land. And similarly to that, Dan Randolph said, P.J. O'Rourke predicted today a Clinton presidency. P.J. O'Rourke is the reason I'm here. Meanwhile, this is quoting P.J. apparently, meanwhile, the lousy failed one-term Hillary Clinton presidency will act as an incubator for the Republican leadership. The Republicans will hatch some talent, maybe a guy like Paul Ryan they already have. And then he goes on to say some Republicans going to come along to sort the serious GOP issues from the trivial ones. Some Republican will be able to speak wisely and coherently for the disgruntled Trump supporters, be able to reassure the disappointed Tea Party constitutionalists, be able to bring a pot of glue instead of a jar of acid to bind together the regular commonsensical elements of the American electorate. The commonsensical middle ground, you know. That's why we named this the Common Sense Resistance. That's why people have, I guess, gravitated to my work. Somebody just asked a question about the movie career. I'd like to start the movies next year, but I'll tell you something. I'd said on this show several months ago that I'm just going to go through the election, and then after the election, I'm going to go to the reserves, and instead of doing 7 videos a week, I'll do 1 a week or something like that. I'm beginning to think now that that's not going to happen. completely underestimated this year and how destructive it is to the country in every way. So I'm going to be sticking around doing this full time, and if I can get a movie in there as well, that'd be good, because I think you can swing people that way. But yeah, I don't see right now the joker in the deck is the FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton. If she's indicted and prosecuted, then all bets are off. Nobody knows what's going on. But if things go along the trail that they're going now, I really do not see how the Republicans can win this. I just don't see how. Donald Trump has drawn enormous support from people, and the turnout on the Republican side has been huge, largely because of him. And he's pulled some people who were not Republicans before over, and that's all true. But he's also managed to alienate an awful lot of the core constituency of the GOP. So if Donald Trump is the nominee, I don't think he's going to get the support from the Republicans he wants. And if he's not the nominee, I am quite convinced he'll go out third party. If he goes into the convention leading in delegates, doesn't win on the first vote, and then the second vote goes to Cruz, that's smart politics on the part of Cruz. But I don't see Donald Trump putting up with it. I don't see his supporters putting up with it either. I said you need to whatever happens on the inside of that convention hall has to be matched by the outside. If Ted Cruz is going to be the nominee because of a second or third round of voting, then you better damn well make the case why this is not only fair and just, but American and so on. But even then, if Cruz is the nominee, the Trump supporters aren't going to come out. They're the enthusiastic thing. I just don't see how we get this election done with this country, with this party as split down the middle as we do. Now, if Hillary's taken away, that's a whole nother ballgame. It's a whole nother ballgame. But let's assume we lose. Because we talked about what happens if we win. I don't think anybody knows. Trump is like the singularity. But let's assume that he loses. And let's assume for a minute that he loses badly. What will that do to the Republican Party? The GOP as it exists today is not a conservative party, and it hasn't been for the entire time Barack Obama's been in office. This is my personal opinion, and not only is it okay to disagree with me, it's expected to disagree with me. It's fine. But my personal opinion is this: if after this is over and it's a big loss, I would consider seriously moving into that, not the middle, and not the center right. I wouldn't weaken any of my standards at all. On the contrary, I'd strengthen them. But there are issues that the Republicans are known for, and I would drop those issues, and that's most of the social issues. I just see us losing these issues one way or another, and losing them means if we lose the social issues, we also lose the economic issues, and we also lose the cultural issues, and we also lose the defense issues because we don't have any power because we're losing. I think gay marriage is a great example. I think gay marriage is the perfect example. If we really want to learn from things, I think this is the perfect case to look at. I know a lot of conservative people have a real problem with homosexuality, and especially the promotion of it. And I've been a theater major, and I started working around the theater when I was 15 at the Miami Museum of Science. Had a little theater group there. So I've been around gay people my entire life. I shared an apartment with a gay man for, I guess, about 2 years back in Gainesville. So I don't have any particular problems with gays at all. And I think that's pretty self-evident by this point. Certainly it is to me. But there's definitely an agenda, and there's definitely this idea with this, this bathroom thing that smaller and smaller and smaller minorities are going to dictate to the middle what acceptable behavior is, and they're going to twist our arms until we obey them, and that's got to stop. But the reason I think gay marriage is such an interesting example of where I would take a party after this election, one way or another, I would go, in fact, to the common sense resistance idea, and the reason I bring up gay marriage is simply this. If you look at the history of it, you're really looking at the history of state licensing marriage. States, if I was campaigning on this issue, I would say, listen, I've said this many times in real time, but here's how it would go if it means what would happen to the party afterward. This would be my new Conservative Party's position on gay marriage. I would say, well, look, I've looked at this pocket constitution of mine, and the gay marriage is not anywhere in here. Not anywhere. And you know what's interesting? Straight marriage isn't in here at all either. It's not covered by the federal government. It has absolutely no business doing anything like this. This is our argument entirely. This is our consistent, compelling argument that the government is involved in things it has no business being involved in whatsoever. So So this is my position, and presumably the position of the New Conservative Party of the Common Sense Resistance, or whatever you want to call it. Our position is this. Look, Constitution doesn't say anything about marriage, gay or straight. We find out if we read our history that the reason that you need a marriage license in the first place, and the reason that a government can bar marriages, prevent people from being married, is because after the Civil War, the Democrats, as usual in the South, erected these barriers to prevent white people from marrying black people. They basically said, well, if you're gonna, we can't really stop this, what was the word they used, concatenation or something, but we can say that you're not allowed to get married until you have a license from the state of Alabama or Florida, Georgia, whatever the case may be, and so we're not going to give it to you. If we don't like, that went down the river as far as race goes, but that's why we have this whole gay marriage issue. The government has nothing to do with your marriage. It should have nothing to do with it. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and here's where I think you really win people over, because that sounds like a complete retreat from our principles, but it's not. It's not. Our principles are that government should be out of society in just about everywhere, except for very limited places that are listed in the enumerated powers. But this is the chaser to that argument, because it sounds like you're just keeling over to the progressives, but the chaser to that argument is this. So since the government has nothing to do with this, and since the Constitution does not say anything about marriage, what it means is if you have a congregation that wants to marry two people together or have a civil ceremony, fine. It doesn't hurt me. It's not hitting my nose. That swinging their fist is not hitting my nose. It doesn't affect me if two gay people get married. I may not like it, and I may think that it leads to the destruction of civilization, but that's a moral argument, not a political one. Now, what is interesting is that there is, in fact, a part of the Constitution that does talk about this issue, and it's the First Amendment. So that means that if you're a gay couple and you find a congregation that will marry you, and everybody in the congregation, including the pastor, obviously, is behind it, then knock yourselves out, have a good time, genuinely wish you the very best. I really do. However, if you are part of a congregation that considers this a sin, a biblical sin, it's very clear in the Bible, it's listed as a sin and so on, and that congregation chooses to not marry you, then you have to respect that congregation's right. They have a First Amendment right to say, we're not going to do it. And this is where the thing has gone too far in the other direction. The gay community is trying to enforce acceptance. They're trying to enforce tolerance and acceptance, and they have no right to do that. They have no right to tell me what to think. So while it's true that the government can't prevent people from gay people being married because the government's got nothing to do with it, the government does in fact have an obligation under the First Amendment to protect people's ability to think what they want to think and to act according to their conscience and according to their religious beliefs. And so the idea of the government forcing a church to marry two gay people when that particular church was against it is repulsive. It's exactly what we fear. So it's consistent. It's a consistent position. The government should be out of things like marriage, but the government is there to protect the innate, pre-existing right to free speech that is your natural law rights and came with you when you were born. There you go. So that. If you were to run on a program of limited government, if you were on a program of lower taxes because private companies do things better than the government, if it were my party, I would say no re-election. None. Term limits, yeah, 1 term. If you do a great 2 years as a representative, terrific. Go back home. Your information that you came to Washington with 2 years ago is obsolete now. A party that basically advertised itself as saying, look, nobody in this party gets reelected to the same office. If you're a representative and you want to become a senator, that's fine. If you're a senator, you want to become a governor, that's fine. If you're a governor, you want to become a president, that's fine. But no reelection to the same office, period. Because our theory of government, I would say, is that it's supposed to be government of the people and not a political class. The Democrats have people been in there 60 years. When Robert Byrd died, when he was brought into the Senate, there was no color TV. Forget the internet. I don't even know if there was electricity when Robert Byrd came to the Senate. So we will say no. We believe that there's enough people in America with good sense that we can find 535 of them every couple of years without any trouble whatsoever. And then think about what happens, because if you do that, if you run a party that basically says, no, we're not going to have re-election, Then your candidates are immune to lobbying pressure, because most of that lobbying pressure is applied in terms of donations to allow you to win your reelection to your ongoing lifelong position. And you don't have to spend the second half of your term campaigning to have a third half of a term. You just have to do your work, and then you get to go home. And when you go home in glory. You did you came to Washington, you brought current problems from your neighborhood with you to Washington, did your best to solve them, and now you go back into the soup and somebody new comes out. If you had a party that did this, it would clean up the American people. If you were talking about things like, look, we need to audit the Federal Reserve. We have trillions of dollars in debt, and it's got to be paid back, and it took 60 years to get us there, so it's going to take 2 generations, maybe 3, to get us paid back. But we're doing a balanced budget and a surplus this year, even if it's a dollar surplus. And really, in terms of the budget, you can make the case, look, to the American people, if we freeze spending right now, if we don't make a single cut at all, nothing, we don't cut anything, but the 2016 budget is going to be the budget for the next 10 or 15 years. We're not going to have automatic increases. We're just going to stay where we are. Then the economy grows at such a rate that the what is now $20 trillion, presumably, if there's still a country and an economy 100 years from now, $20 trillion is going to feel like $20 billion. And so you just basically grow yourself out of it. But you have to stop increasing it. And these are simple things, and the American people get behind this in a real way, I think. A real way. Then, there you go. So, I think after this election's over, one way or another, there's definitely room to put together some pieces, and it pains me to watch the Republican Party fall apart, but it's not Donald Trump that's causing the Republican Party to fall apart. It's John Boehner and Mitch McConnell and all the rest of the people that we sent to Washington to do a job, and then just not only betrayed us, just ignored us, just pretended like it didn't happen. That's what's destroyed the Republican Party, is the fact that no conservatives have any faith in them because they're not a conservative party. So let's get one. Anyway, that's an interesting question, and I think there might be a lot of work to do in the future, and I did not think I'd be looking at the ruin of everything quite this fast, so I may have to stay on duty after all. Let's see. This is kind of fun. Matthew Lloyd asks, I have a kind of a political fantasy about this. Matthew Lloyd asks, looking forward, what is the likelihood of a 4-person, assuming we count Hillary as a person and not some evil hobgoblin from the Netherrealm, what's the chance of a 4-person presidential race this fall, and what would that mean for elections and our 2-party system moving forward? The chance of this happening is very slim, and it's very slim because it's unlikely on both sides. It's unlikely that Ted Cruz will get the nomination, and if he does get the nomination, I believe that Donald Trump will take his people and go third party. And I think Donald Trump, he would have a case. He would certainly have a case that holds up enough with his supporters. But I believe in the rule of law, and as long as the laws were followed and Donald Trump didn't have a clear majority going in and everybody who's committed to him voted for him on the first vote and changed their vote afterwards, that's how the system works. So I can see a world where there are 2 Republican contenders. I don't think Ted Cruz is going to go, and I don't think Ted Cruz is going to go as an independent. I don't think anything like that is going to happen. If Ted Cruz doesn't get the nomination, I suspect Ted Cruz will reluctantly, or maybe not so reluctantly, maybe he'll just really be a good soldier and support the Republican nominee. But so the chance of a 3-person race, I think, is not inconceivable. The chance of a 4-person race is really tough because I don't think Bernie Sanders has it in him to part with the Democratic Party the way that Trump does to part with the Republican Party. I just don't see him doing it. He's got the real enthusiasm, but and the reason I say I don't think he'd do it is because I watched that first debate with Hillary Clinton, and out of the gate he says, we're tired of hearing about the email scandal. Here's the biggest bonbon I can possibly give you, Dowager Empress, and Hillary cackled, and that's not a guy who sounds like he wants to win. So I don't see it happening, but I'll tell you what, like I said, it's kind of a political fantasy for me. I'd love it if it happened, because then you would have a real show. As John Condon just wrote, it's inconceivable, what would happen after that? It would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Because then you would basically have your 4 different groups, which really would be 3 different groups, and that would be you would have the socialists and all the young kids and all the rest of these lunatics who think that everything is free. They go to Bernie. Hillary would get the disgruntled feminists. Trump would get the disgruntled white middle class vote. Ted Cruz would get the constitutionalists, and then you'd find out. Then you'd find out what really happened with the country. And of course, the problem with that is, if you have a country this disparate, and everybody forgets how this is not really one country. It's probably 7 or 10 or 15 or 100 different countries, but the Maine Yankees are not the same as the southwestern Arizona desert dwellers, and they're not the same as the deep south in Louisiana, and they're not the same as the Midwesterners in Maine and in Minnesota, and they're not the same as the tree huggers out in Oregon. So the idea that the President of the United States would be able to be elected with something like 25 or 35% of the vote, 26% of the vote, everybody else getting less on a four-person race, I just don't think it would stick. I think the president has to win more than 50% of the country just emotionally. And things are coming apart. That can be good or bad. What we had here before is not working, and it's time to do something different. So that would be my position on that. How are we doing on time here? We're doing okay. I just have so much work to do tonight. Just so much work to do. Let's see. Oh, this is cool. I'm sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah. It'd be a fun thing to close with, because we are doing a short one tonight. I'm sorry about that, but it's better than nothing, I hope. Ryan Castle says, hey, Bill, I'm an engineering student working on a university team in Elon Musk's Hyperloop competition. Our team is currently fabricating the pod for the competition this summer. Any thoughts on going 700 or maybe even 3,000 miles per hour, 10 feet above the ground? What's it like for a space-age kid to see Logan's Run quickly become a reality? That's a lovely question. First of all, congratulations on working so hard. An engineering degree is a much harder degree to get than a Musk studies degree, or an entrepreneurial studies degree, or a women's studies degree, or medieval Renaissance poetry, or whatever. Engineering is hard because there's math. So congratulations on that. And especially congratulations working for Elon Musk. And I know a lot of people who are real purists have a problem with Elon because he took some government money for development, and NASA's given him grants and stuff. But my take on that is, number one, he's the only hope we have. So I'm willing to look a little bit the other way on this. But secondly, he's accepting money to develop a technology that he would sell to the government as a private citizen. SpaceX is a private company. And when I am just about ready to give up the ghost, when I'm just absolutely convinced that the best days of this country are way behind us, that the American experience peaked on July 20th, 1969, then I watch these young people, and many of them millennials, who I've done nothing but trash pretty solidly. I see them standing around the big screens down there in Hawthorne, and I watch them land a rocket that has taken off back on its tail. And then they did it out at sea in what looked to me like a gale force winds. And I say to myself, the Russians haven't done this, the Chinese haven't done this, the Europeans haven't done this, no one's done this, but Elon Musk has done it. And Jeff Bezos has Blue Horizon, has done it. Private Americans have done it. American individuals have done it. So Elon Musk is an enormous hero of mine, and I just think the world of him. I really do. Now, to the actual question, I'm virtually positive about this. I'm 99.5% positive, but I'm quite sure the Hyperloop is the idea of extremely high-speed travel. But the problem is, the engineering problem is, that you can't get much faster than 200 or 300 miles an hour on the ground. The fastest bullet trains, I want to say, are something like 271 miles per hour, something like that, in that general neighborhood, I want to say. Blue Origin. Thanks, Victoria. So how do you do it? Well, the reason you can't get going that fast on the ground on rails is mostly a problem with air resistance. We we can travel at 550 miles an hour is about right for a commercial jetliner. And the reason we can do that is because the jet's at 35,000 feet and 90% of the atmosphere by volume, not by distance, but by volume, is below you when you fly in a commercial jetliner. The air up there is extremely thin. That means it's putting out very little drag on the airplane, and that airplane can go a lot faster. If you were to take a 747 or something and try to see what its top speed was at sea level, it'd be 200 knots less than that. The plane just couldn't go that fast because the air is too thick. So what is happening is, in order to make this work, and this is why I referenced Logan's Run, because of all these elevated tubes, you have to travel, as Azimuth Smith just beat me to it, you have to travel in not perhaps a vacuum, but in at least a partial vacuum. You have to make the area in front of that passenger car, you have to make the air there thin enough so that it can get up to those kind of speeds without running into all this drag resistance. And especially if you're traveling down a tube, because you have to travel down a tube if you're going to evacuate the air in front of it and maybe add pressure to behind it. But if you're in a tube, then drag, of course, becomes an enormous problem. If you have atmospheric pressure in front of this vehicle, and the vehicle's sides are touching the wall, it's going to take an incredible amount of energy to move that thing fast, even more so than outside, because that pressure wave is going to back up inside the length of the tunnel. So the idea is that you would basically take a tube of extreme strength, and you would run a car through this tube, and you would evacuate the air in front of it. And then how it was driven is depending on the individual design. I think probably most designs would probably go with an electromagnetic system, where you're levitating the car off the ground using electromagnets, and you're also using electromagnets to accelerate it. And electromagnets with these rail guns are just able to accelerate something to insane speeds. I mean, they can just keep going. Unlike an explosive charge that goes off, it's finished, and that's the bullet is going as fast as it's going to go when it comes out of the muzzle. And every split second after that, it's getting slower. On a rail system, an electromagnetic rail system, you can just keep accelerating it as much as you want to. It's just a question of how fast you pulse the positive and negative poles on the electromagnets. So here's the answer to your question, Ryan. If let's just, for the sake of the argument, assume that we're talking about tubes that are, I think you said 10 feet or 20 feet above the ground, and in them are capsules like train compartments that are moving at least as fast as a jet airliner, which is 550 miles an hour, 600, 700, 800 miles an hour, 3,000 miles an hour was mentioned. It wouldn't be supersonic if it turned out that the air was thin enough. The thicker the air is, the lower the supersonic threshold becomes. You go supersonic at sea level, I want to say around 728 knots. I'm not exactly sure. As you get up higher, you have to go faster because the air is thinner, and it's complicated, but you get the idea. So yes, I'd love the idea. I think the idea is terrific. But the one thing that I'd never envisioned as a space kid, and the one thing I'd never envisioned when I was watching Logan's Run, is I had never imagined a world where something that cool could be destroyed by a guy with a bomb or a truck. That just never entered my mind, ever. When I was a kid in the 60s, the idea that terrorists would be able to do something that would essentially destroy something that beautiful and elegant and clean, it just never entered my head. But it's entered my head now. So my problem with a very high-speed rail, and my problem with the passenger car in a tube, is if it's 10 feet off the ground, then somebody has to be 11 feet off the ground with something heavy, or a bomb, anywhere. You're talking about covering the enormous distances across the country, and you go much faster than you can in a jet, but, if it's 10 feet above the ground, then how do you protect thousands and thousands and thousands of miles of these tubes from intentional harm? It's hard enough challenge, as you know, as an engineer, to protect them from accidental harm. It's a tough enough challenge to protect them from, just the problems of wear and tear and all the engineering problems that you have when you have a bridge. You don't want the bridge to fall down, right? That's the ultimate test of a bridge, is that it doesn't fall down when you're on it. So you've got all these engineering problems, but then I just don't know how you make it terrorist-proof. Now, with that said, if you were to put these tunnels underground, then you would have a chance of some kind of security. You could you'd have to have the same kind of protections, or certainly better ones than you have on an airplane. But if you're doing it in underground tubes, then you have pretty much the exact same problem as you would have in an airplane. In other words, the only threat to the system would come from inside the container where the people are. You could provide enough security for an underground system, I'm quite sure, to be pretty reasonably safe against terrorism. And then you've got a problem with somebody sneaking a bomb on the train, but you already have that problem with somebody sneaking a bomb on the airplane. So I think that would have to be the requirement, only because of this. It'd be infinitely more expensive to do it underground, but, if these tubes are 10 feet off the ground and I don't know what they're made out of. Let's say they're made out of carbon fiber or something. They're not made out of something that couldn't take a decent-sized explosive. And again, the problem is you can protect a cylinder that's a couple 100 feet long with 200-300 people in it. You can protect that. You can make those people go through screens, and you can do whatever you have to do. But to protect thousands and thousands of miles of these kind of tubes, I don't know. It just seems tough for me. Now, ATS 608 says the problem with high-speed rail is that the government shouldn't have anything to do with transportation. That's exactly right. I don't know if he's getting subsidies, but certainly it sounds like a private enterprise. There is an entire show to be done on a book I read called The Myth of the Robber Barons, and basically it looked at a number of people who were successful in the 1800s and 1900s into this period in American history. So what he did was he looked at these people who had been big successes and their projects. And what he did was he found out that there were two different kinds of entrepreneurs, and one of them was a political entrepreneur, and the other was a market entrepreneur. The political entrepreneur is a guy who comes up with a steamboat like Robert Fulton, and then takes the steamboat design to the United States government and says, here's the steamboat, it's mine. I want exclusive rights to this passageway and so on. And the government says, okay, sure. And then, since it's a monopoly, there's no innovation, there's no price competition. And then along comes somebody like Cornelius Vanderbilt, who is dropped the price by a factor of 10 because he is running a tighter ship. His expenses are much more tightly controlled. He's doing volume, and he's making steamboat rides available to common people that never ever would have been able to afford that. And probably even a better example is if you look at the railroads out in the West in America, late 1800s, you find that I never get the name of these things right. I want to say Western Pacific or the Union Pacific. Anyway, these giant railroads were subsidized by the federal government, and the faster they got them built, the more money they would get. So they didn't spend a lot of time laying out the best possible routes, and they didn't put the best possible materials into the ground. They were just basically taking government money. And then 10 or 15 years after that line was completed, another guy whose name escapes me completed the Northwest Pacific, I want to say. This was a private line. And since it was a private line, he took the time to do extremely careful surveillance. It's Bert Folsom's book. It's called Myth of the Robber Barons. Fantastic. Thanks very much, Times Judge. Excuse me. But what Dr. Folsom was pointing out was this. It might be the Great Northern. In any event, there was a private line, and this line had to spend its own money. And so what they did was they took a lot more time in the surveying. And it may not seem like it's important to you, but it is. If you find the most efficient route through a pass, that means that you have to spend less fuel and less energy getting that train over that pass every single time you run the chain. James J. Hill, Eyes on Fire, I think that's it. Yep. Excuse me, I'm starting to feel like Hillary Clinton here. Hang on a second. So, he spent the time to get level grades, straight lines, and all that other stuff. And since it was his railroad, he put in the top quality steel, which was available but much more expensive. And that meant that the rail line would be much more robust, last longer. Well, as it turns out, he did all these things, and he was saving so much money over the government-sponsored lines that he was putting them out of business. He was putting them out of business because he was charging half or something of what the other guys were charging, or less than that, because he built a more efficient system using his own money, because it was his own money, and there you go. It's a great example of the difference between government investment and private investment. I think what Elon's doing is pretty much private investment. Certainly most of it's private. He's, you know, he put his money where his mouth is. He took a big fortune from PayPal and he put it on the line. And he's made a rocket that can fly into space and land on its own exhaust plume. And, you know, the only way we're going to get to space now is if Elon Musk's Dragon capsule is approved by NASA, and NASA would have approved it. They're just waiting for the. They wanted an escape tower, is my understanding, to save the crew. And I have some engineer friends who said that the cost and the weight and the limited number of options that you could use an escape tower in means that the escape tower is just not worth it. But NASA being NASA, they said, well, we don't care if it's a good idea or bad idea. We just simply cannot lose astronauts anymore. So things like that. I'll just give you one more quick example, and then I'm going to have to go, of this kind of thing. And it was Rand Simberg pointed this out to me. It's a really, I've never done an afterburner, or I won't be doing any more afterburners for a while, but I've never done anything on this exactly, but I need to. In England, in the early part of the 20th century, this exact same kind of thing happened, but they actually happened simultaneously. There was a new design for a dirigible, and there was a competition to build two of them. It was the R100 and the R101, and for the life of me, I cannot remember which one, but I'm virtually positive that it's the R101 was the government-sponsored dirigible. So here's basically the story. You've got a series of blueprints, enormously complex blueprints, and you've got something to build that's enormous, size of football fields. And the government took the set of prints and built one version, and a private company took the same exact set of prints and built another one. And every time that the government had anything to do with anything, they favored their own dirigible, which, as I say, I was pretty sure was R101, at the expense of R100. So R101 had a much, much nicer facility to be built in, and the inspection standards were lessened for R101, and all of this stuff, and basically all of the advantages that government could entail were put into the R101, while the R100 was dealing with shoestring budget and basically, you know, scrapping for every penny. Well, as it turns out, because they had to be so careful and because they had to be so intellectually innovative, because they couldn't solve a problem by throwing money at it, R100 went out and served decades, I think, until the dirigibles just went away with the Zeppelin, with the Hindenburg. But R101 was going to go from Great Britain to, I want to say it was India or something. It was one of those voyages. This is the prestige on the line. R100's out there flying. R100 weighed significantly less, like 30 or 40%, 50% less than the exact same design that the government built. Anyway, then the government says, well, we got to do something impressive with R101. I know, let's sail it to, let's fly it over to India, I think it was. It might have been Asia, but it was at least India. Thousands of miles journey over Europe and, you know, Middle East and so on. So they launched the R101, and it got over the channel, and it crashed in France. It crashed because it was way too heavy and way too underpowered, and it crashed because it was built by the government, who simply threw money at a problem that really needed intellect. And it's another great example of the difference between a government program and a private program. Elon Musk basically has enough money to do what he wants to do. And people openly laughed at the idea of recovering that booster, that first stage booster. You know, you either have something incredibly complex like the space shuttle, or you throw these incredible engines. I don't think the fuel tank's all that expensive or hard to do, but the engines are priceless. You just chuck them into the water every time you launch a rocket. You just throw the engines away. And he said, well, we don't want something as complex as the shuttle, but we'd like to save the engines and save the vehicle if we can. We'll never get the second stage back because that has to be boosted into orbit, but at the very least, let's get the booster back. And sure enough, and you know, and the great thing about Elon Musk is, and this applies to individuals as opposed to governments, is he failed a bunch. The Falcon 1 had a lot of explosions, you know, there were failures everywhere, and he made a personal decision to keep going because it's his money. And then they tried the landing, you know, failed that a bunch of times, and they tried it at sea, failed a bunch of times. And basically, he can do that because it's his money and it's his company. if the government were doing that and failing at that rate, and the press was on them, and government, and the Senate reviews, and if the guy was a Republican, then a Democratic committee, or vice versa, looking into this and why so many failures, they just wouldn't, they never would have gotten there. Somebody said to me once about this. They said if there had been an FAA in the 1930s or 40s, we would never have the jetliners we have today. We would have the FAA certified official government airplane, which would have wooden wings and propellers, and it would carry 30 people from Los Angeles to New York in 35 hours, and the tickets would cost $7,000 in modern money, right? That's what would happen. That's absolutely true. Anyway, as much as I'd like to stay and talk, and I usually go at least 2 hours, it's been about an hour, a little over an hour, hour 5 here, and I have so much editing to do tonight that I have to get going. We've uploaded the new Right Angle for Tomorrow. That's my show. I've got this firewall that has to get done if I can before I leave. If not, I'll have to do it as soon as I come back on Sunday. And I have a bunch of Nexus reports and time over targets that has to be edited. It's been shot. So a little more patience, if you please, if you're a new member, and God knows we've certainly asked enough of you people in the past, but I feel like we're delivering, really delivering what we said we would, and that makes me happy. So we're about halfway there, and a little less than halfway there if we decide that Steve and Scott are going to eat. But whether it succeeds or not, I'm very, very proud of both of those guys, and I'm very proud of the way all of us handled this news, and I'm very proud of the way we all basically agreed to work for nothing in order to keep the show going. So I'll just make another appeal because this is what I have to do. If you're a fan of Trifecta, you're a Trifecta fan, and you like the idea of Right Angle, which is essentially the same thing, and you're watching for free, that's fine. But you need to know that Steve and Scott and I are working for free, and we can't work for free forever. Now, I'm not working for free all across the board, but I'm doing Trifecta for free. And so is, Right Angle for free, and so is Steve, and so is Scott. And we can do it for a while, but we can't do it forever. And so it's going to be a question of whether or not enough people become members at BillWhittle.com. And if enough members become members, then enough people become members, then that show will go indefinitely. And if not, then it'll probably die in a couple weeks. So with that said, we've gotten about half of what we need. That's a tremendous, tremendous number, and it's a very, very encouraging number. So we're very, very grateful. And if you've been on the fence about this, or if you think maybe somebody else is going to take care of it, it doesn't work that way. It's got to be you. Your support has kept these videos going out to, I think I did a rough thumbnails, 30, 40, 50 million YouTube hits all across the board on top of everything. Those videos are made possible by very, very few people, but they've touched a lot of people, changed a lot of minds. The number one with the bullet, and the Trayvon Martin one, and the 3.5 days, with the Occupy Wall Street one, they really changed minds. And there's a very small number of people who are actually paying real money to do that. And those are our members, and also the PJTV members who had their membership refunded, pro rata refunded, I think. So once again, it's a pitch to go to BillWhittle.com and click on the Become a Member button. And there's also a one-time donation if that's all you can do. And I never like asking for help like this, but I begin to realize that it's not me that's asking for the help. It's the message, and it's the country. And I know some people have already said, "Hey, listen, I'm really sorry. I can't do it right now." I get it. Believe me, I get it. I was flat broke for most of my life. I don't want anybody feeling guilty about this at all. I'm very, very grateful for all the support I have. And as usual, 90% of what we do is free. So the rest of it goes to the people who've taken the financial risk. And we'd like you to be one of those people if you can. In any event, you'll be seeing a few more commercials from me, and that's because we have to get there. And if we don't get there, we don't get there. And if we don't get there, we're eventually going to be out of business. And I don't want to be out of business, especially not now. So thank you very much again for your support. It's not just financial support; your emotional support and moral support has been really, really important to me and got me through a very, very bad 2015. And this thing is looking a lot better now. So if you can do something, great. If not, don't worry about it. But for those of you who have done something, again, thank you very much. I always like to close by thanking our members. So that'll be the end of Stratosphere Lounge episode 112, which in itself is kind of a miracle, really. I'm going out of town, but I don't think I've got anything middle of next week. You never know. I hate missing shows. I try not to miss 2 of them in a row, but I'm expecting to be here next Wednesday night along with the rest of you. And until then, thank you very much for watching and all the kind words. And hopefully we'll see you next week for number 119. Okay? Take care of yourselves. Don't give up.